Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're focusing on something that sounds, well, deceptively simple, but it holds immense power. The art, the practice, really, of saying no.
It feels basic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Almost too simple to talk about sometimes.
Right.
Yet, for so many of us, actually saying no effectively is a constant struggle.
Yeah.
And mastering it, well, it can fundamentally change the shape of your life.
It absolutely can. Our deep dive today is looking closely at an insightful piece called The Powerful Practice of Saying No.
Good source material.
Yeah. And our goal isn't just to understand why saying no matters, though we'll cover that. We really want to get into the practical how.
Nitty-gritty.
Exactly. And explore those ripple effects it has, on your time, your energy, your relationships, and maybe most crucially, your sense of self-worth, your self-respect.
Exactly. We'll explore that profound shift that happens when you start setting these boundaries. Moving from feeling, overwhelmed and drained to feeling empowered and actually genuinely respected.
Yeah. Okay, let's dive in. Let's see what key insights this piece offers.
Sound good?
So at the heart of this whole idea is something really fundamental. It's the concept that saying no to one thing, it's actually saying a much bigger yes to something else.
And the piece makes it really clear that most important, yes. It's yes to yourself. It's about consciously choosing where your finite resources, your energy, your time actually go.
I loved the analogy they used right at the start, thinking of your life, your time, your energy, like a garden.
Right, your garden only has so much space, right? So much water, so much sunlight.
Limited resources.
Exactly, and if you try to cram everything into it, every single plant, every flower, every vegetable you can possibly think of, well, it quickly becomes overcrowded.
Chaos.
Total chaos. Nothing gets enough resources to thrive, and it just turns into this unsustainable mess.
Which sounds, frankly, a lot like my life sometimes when I say yes to everything.
Doesn't it? For many of us.
Yeah.
But saying no is like consciously deciding which plants truly belong in your garden. It's like clearing out the weeds, the things that just drain resources, to make space for what you actually want to cultivate, what nourishes you. That's where things can really thrive.
Can you give us some concrete examples that no to this, yes to that idea in practice?
Sure. Think about it. Saying no to that request to work late again when you're already exhausted.
Yeah.
You're actually saying yes to getting crucial rest, to recharging your batteries. Saying no to, say, a social invitation you feel obligated to accept but don't really want to go to.
Oh, the obligation invites.
Right. You might be saying yes to a quiet evening, finally reading that book on your nightstand, or maybe spending some uninterrupted time with your child, or honestly, just finding that peace of mind you desperately need.
Framing it like that as a yes to yourself, it completely changes the feeling around it, doesn't it?
It really does.
It stops being about being unhelpful or selfish, and it becomes about, intentional living. And it connects so well to that quote they included from Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
The quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of the decisions you make. This perspective really positions saying no as one of those incredibly powerful life-shaping decisions.
It absolutely is. It's an active choice. You're choosing to be the steward of your most valuable and, importantly, non-renewable resources, your time and your energy.
Okay. But here's where the rubber meets the road for most people, I think. The biggest barrier isn't usually understanding the concept.
No, the theory is easy.
It's dealing with the feeling. Specifically, that wave of guilt that often washes over you when you even think about saying no.
Guilt is massive here. Just huge. The piece shares the story of Laura, who sounded like she was just perpetually saying yes, bake sales, late night work calls, extra shifts.
The classic people pleaser pattern.
Totally. Until her body basically gave a definitive no for her. Burnout, getting sick.
The physical toll is real.
It really is. And even after that wake-up call, when she finally forced herself to say no to just one more late-night meeting, what was the immediate feeling?
Let me guess. Guilt.
Bingo. That familiar wave of guilt. But what's fascinating is what came after the guilt. The next day, she reported feeling lighter, like a new kind of strength. And surprisingly, she felt this sense of respect from others.
That's the paradox, isn't it? We expect pushback, maybe disapproval, but sometimes that clarity actually earns respect.
Exactly. And the piece makes such a crucial point about that guilt. It's not necessarily a sign you've done something objectively wrong.
Right. It doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Not at all. It's often just like an echo. Old programming, maybe from childhood, where we learned our worth was somehow tied to pleasing others, to always accommodating. It's an old, deeply ingrained habit, just making noise as you try to establish a new, healthier pattern.
And there's a simple test suggested for when that guilt bubbles up.
Yes, and it's remarkably simple, really. Pause, take a breath, and honestly ask yourself, did I cause actual harm to this person by saying no?
Actual harm, not just inconvenience or disappointment.
Precisely. If the genuine answer is no, you haven't put them in danger, you haven't destroyed their life, you haven't, truly harmed them, then you can practice letting that guilt just drift away. See it for what it is. An emotion, maybe an old habit, not a moral failing.
Which leads nicely to another point that feels like it could free up so much mental energy. You don't need a long, complicated explanation.
Oh, this is huge. We feel this obligation, right, to give this elaborate backstory, justify our no.
Yeah, weaving a whole narrative.
But this perspective is clear. A simple, respectful, no, that doesn't work for me, or maybe I'm not available for that, is usually entirely sufficient. It's honest, it's clear, and it maintains your boundary without getting bogged down in all these unnecessary details or, worse, lies.
I liked the analogy they used for this. It's like locking your front door at night. You don't feel the need to explain to every stranger who walks by why you aren't opening it for them. It's your boundary, it's your space, and that's reason enough.
It really normalizes the act, doesn't it? Setting a boundary shouldn't require a thesis defense. And the piece includes a little reflection exercise, suggesting you think about a draining yes you gave recently.
Okay.
Imagine actually saying no instead, and then just notice. Notice the physical and mental feeling that arises in that imagined scenario. That feeling of spaciousness, maybe lightness.
Yeah.
That's the territory. That's where self-respect starts to grow.
Okay, let's tackle maybe the biggest fear, the one that holds so many people back. This myth that saying no is inherently rude or unkind.
This might be the toughest cultural belief to untangle, honestly.
Why?
We've somehow been taught to equate being nice with being compliant.
Like they're the same thing.
Exactly. But true kindness, real kindness, involves respect. Respect for others, absolutely. But critically, respect for yourself too.
So saying no doesn't automatically make you a bad person.
Not at all. It makes you a clear person. And the piece really stresses, you can deliver your no with a smile. You can offer empathy for the other person's situation. Oh, that sounds like a real challenge you're facing. And still hold your boundary firm.
It reminds me of that Denzel Washington quote, you pray for rain, you gotta deal with the mud too.
Exactly. It highlights that standing up for yourself, setting that boundary, it might involve some initial discomfort, maybe some mud, a bit of awkwardness perhaps, or mild disappointment from the other person. But the rain, the positive outcome, reclaiming your life, your energy, it's worth navigating that temporary discomfort.
So the first step, really, to reclaiming your time, your energy, your peace. It isn't through anger or making up elaborate excuses. It's through this quiet, confident strength of saying no.
Yeah, that shift in perspective feels foundational.
Okay, so if we accept that, the natural next question is, how do we actually build this muscle? How does saying no become less terrifying and more, well, natural?
Now we're getting into the practice part. That's step 5 in the piece, focusing on how practice builds genuine confidence.
And the analogy here is just perfect. Learning to ride a bike.
Spot on. Nobody hops on a bike for the very first time and just glides away effortlessly, right?
That's totally not me.
It's wobbly, you might fall, feels awkward, maybe scary, but you keep trying, you get back on. And slowly, gradually, your body develops that muscle memory. Your balance improves, and eventually you just ride. You don't even think about the mechanics anymore.
Saying no is exactly the same kind of skill development.
It really is. Each time you practice saying that clear, kind, firm no, you're building your internal strength. You're training your courage muscle, you're reinforcing your self-respect, and you're sharpening your clarity about what works for you.
The piece shares the story of James.
Right, James at work, habitually saying yes to every single request, piling on extra tasks, staying late even when he was already completely swamped.
Such a classic work scenario.
Oh.
So relatable.
Absolutely. So one evening, his manager asks him to stay late again. James feels that familiar pressure, that knot in his stomach. But this time, he takes a breath. And he just calmly says, I'm actually not available to stay late tonight. I have personal plans.
Simple, direct. And the crucial part of that story is what happened next, or rather what didn't happen.
Exactly. The world didn't end. The company didn't collapse. His manager simply said, okay, no problem, I'll find someone else. And for James, the power wasn't just in finally saying the words.
Right.
It was in realizing that the fear he'd been carrying, this huge fear of catastrophe, of getting fired, of letting everyone down, it was completely disproportionate to the reality. Saying no simply created space, didn't create disaster.
That feels incredibly empowering just hearing it. The piece even includes a little mini challenge, doesn't it? Encouraging you to start small.
Yes, just practice saying no to one tiny low-stakes thing this week. Maybe it's turning down a second helping of dessert you don't really want, or saying you can't make a non-essential Zoom call. Start small to build that muscle memory without high pressure.
Good advice. And this leads to a really fascinating, almost paradoxical point they make. Step 6, the idea that people often end up respecting you more when you say no clearly.
This is so counterintuitive, isn't it? Because, like we said, we often say yes specifically to try and be liked, to avoid potential rejection or conflict.
Yeah, we think yes equals liked.
But respect isn't earned through endless compliance. It's earned through self-respect. When you value your own time and energy,
You signal to others that you have boundaries, that you have standards.
precisely. Think about people you genuinely admire.
Yeah.
Effective leaders, good mentors, friends who seem really centered and grounded. They usually aren't doormats, are they?
No, definitely not.
They have limits. And because they have limits, when they do commit, when they give their yes, it actually means something. It feels valuable because it's a considered choice, not just an automatic reflex.
So by saying no confidently, you're kind of modeling how you expect to be treated. You're teaching people.
You absolutely are. You're teaching people that you value yourself. And this often leads others, maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, to value you more in return. The piece tells another story about Sophia.
In the parent-teacher group.
That's the one. Feeling immense pressure to volunteer for absolutely everything. Bake sales, committees, you name it.
So she politely declined helping at the next bake sale, just saying she couldn't manage it this time. And she was bracing herself for judgment.
Yeah, expecting the side eye or comments?
But instead, another parent came up to her quietly afterwards and actually thanked her.
Really?
Yeah. That parent confessed they had been wanting to say no too, feeling totally overwhelmed, but were just too afraid. Sophia's quiet courage in setting her boundary gave permission, in a way, to someone else to do the same. It can have this ripple effect you don't even anticipate.
Wow. That perfectly illustrates the Brian Tracy quote they included. The act of taking responsibility is the source of real power. Saying no is taking responsibility for your own well-being, your own life choices. It's a direct link, isn't it, between agency taking action and feeling that personal power.
Let's revisit step 7 quickly, because it's a point the source clearly wants to hammer home, and it's one people really struggle with. Kindness is not the same as compliance.
It really bears repeating because this is where that old programming, that old guilt is loudest. Being helpful, being generous, these are wonderful qualities, but they don't require you to deplete yourself or sacrifice your core needs constantly. Being a good person isn't synonymous with saying yes to every single request that comes your way, regardless of the cost to you.
You can absolutely be kind, you can be caring, you can be empathetic, and still say no when you need to.
You really can. The piece uses a beautiful analogy here, the lighthouse.
Ah, the lighthouse. I like that
The
one.
lighthouse stands strong, right? On its foundation, it shines its light consistently to guide ships safely. It weathers storms, it serves others powerfully. But it doesn't leave its foundation to chase after every single ship that passes by.
No, it stays put.
And it doesn't dim its light just because, I don't know, the sea might prefer less brightness that night. It stays anchored, it shines its light steadily, and in doing so, it's most effective and enduring. You can shine your kindness and care for others without abandoning your own core, without dimming your own light.
That's a great image. And the source offers a specific, kind but clear sentence structure for these situations too, right?
Yes, it's simple and really effective. I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I have to say no this time. It does two things. It acknowledges their request and the fact they thought of you, which is validating, while clearly stating your limit without over-apologizing or making excuses.
Okay, now for another point that might feel a bit counterintuitive at first, step 8. Saying no can actually make your relationship stronger.
This is a big one, because the initial fear is always that saying no will push people away, damage the connection. But the reality, often, is that clear boundaries build trust. Think about it. If you're always saying yes out of fear or obligation, your relationships can start to feel heavy, burdened by unspoken resentment or just a lack of authenticity.
Yeah, it's like it's built on shaky ground, not real.
Exactly. But when you set respectful boundaries, people know where they stand with you. There's less confusion, less guessing, less awkward pushing because they understand your limits. And that fosters mutual respect. Think back to James's story at work.
The guy who said no to staying late.
Yeah, after he started occasionally saying no, his colleagues didn't stop asking him for help entirely, but they started asking with more respect, maybe more consideration for his existing workload.
So his yes, when he gave it, meant more. It felt genuine.
It did, because it was clearly a genuine choice, not an automatic obligation. Boundaries, in a way, create a sense of safety within a relationship. People know what to expect. And that safety is actually essential for true, deep connection to flourish.
Like the analogy they use of the two trees.
Yes.
Oh.
If trees are planted too close together, what happens? Their roots compete fiercely underground for water, for nutrients, and neither one really thrives. They stunt each other's growth.
Right.
But give them healthy space between them, and both can grow strong and tall, maybe even supporting each other eventually, just by standing firmly in their own ground. Boundaries give both people in a relationship that necessary space to breathe and grow side by side.
That really reframes boundaries from something potentially negative, like a wall, to something supportive, like healthy space. Okay, so just to recap this section quickly, practicing no builds that confidence muscle.
Like riding the bike.
Respecting yourself tends to earn respect from others. Kindness isn't about being a doormat, and setting clear boundaries can actually deepen relationships. Your no isn't just a rejection of others, it's a declaration of your own value. It prompts that internal check. Is my yes coming from my heart, or is it coming from guilt or obligation?
A really powerful internal check-in.
Right. So now that we've explored the why and the potential benefits, let's get super practical. How do we actually put this into action? Part 3 of the piece gets into the no toolkit. And step 9 is foundational, self-awareness.
This is really where it all starts, before you automatically blurt out that yes, which, let's face it, is the default mode for many of us.
Guilty.
Pause. Just pause.
Yeah.
We often operate on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
Driven by habit or fear or that old familiar guilt.
So what should we do in that pause? What does that look like?
Breathe. Seriously, just take a breath, then do a quick physical check-in. How does this request actually feel in your body? Does it feel light and maybe even energizing? Or does it feel heavy, draining, like a weight?
Listen to your gut.
Totally. Then ask yourself those crucial questions highlighted in the piece. Do I genuinely want to do this? Do I realistically have the time and energy right now? Am I likely to regret saying yes to this later? If the honest answers to those questions point towards no, well, that's your cue. That's when you find the courage to speak your truth.
It's about listening to your internal compass, as the source describes it. That feeling of dread or overwhelm isn't something to ignore. It's a signal. It's telling you, hey, protect your peace here.
Exactly. It's vital information your body is giving you. Don't override it without consideration.
Okay, step 10 is the practical toolkit, those actual usable phrases. Let's run through some of them for different situations, because having the words helps.
Absolutely. These are designed to be simple, clear, and respectful. So for a friend asking for a favor when you're already completely overloaded, something like, oh, I really wish I could help out, but honestly, my plate is just too full right now.
Clear, kind, no over-explaining needed. What about social pressure? That invitation you'd really rather skip.
Maybe. Thanks so much for thinking of me. I really appreciate the invite, but I'm going to pass this time. I just really need some quiet downtime this weekend.
It's honest about your capacity without making excuses or judging their event.
Okay, what about at work? A coworker asks you to take on something extra, and you genuinely can't manage it. You could try. I appreciate you asking me first, but I'm really at capacity with my current workload right now. Let's maybe brainstorm if there's another way this could be handled, or who else might have bandwidth. It's collaborative, shows willing, but holds your boundary.
And those tricky family requests. The ones that often come with a side order of guilt.
Yeah, those require compassion for their potential reaction, but still clarity. Maybe. Mom, Dad, whoever, I understand this is really important to you and I wish I could, but I have to take care of my own needs right now. I hope you can understand.
That's gentle but firm. And what if someone is really persistent? They just won't take no for an answer.
The piece suggests a firm but calm line to respectfully shut down further negotiation. I've already given you my answer on this, and I'm not really comfortable discussing it further. This signals a conversation on that specific topic is closed. No more debate.
That toolkit is incredibly helpful. Just having those phrases ready can make a huge difference. And it reinforces that idea that short and clear is usually better than a long, possibly fabricated excuse.
Absolutely. And the piece makes another critical point here. If someone gets upset when you say no, that doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong.
Right. Their reaction isn't necessarily your fault.
It simply means they are encountering your boundary, maybe for the first time, and they are having to adjust to it. Their adjustment to your clearly stated boundary is their work to do, not yours to manage or fix by caving in.
Which moves us directly into step 11, handling that pushback with grace. Because, let's be real, it's probably going to happen sometimes, right? Especially if people are used to you always saying yes.
Oh, for sure. They might react with disappointment, maybe mild frustration, confusion, or yes, sometimes they might even try to lay on the guilt a bit thicker. But you have to anchor yourself in the understanding that you are not responsible for other people's emotional reactions to your boundaries.
There's that rubber band analogy again, isn't there?
Yes. If you've been overstretched like a rubber band for a long, long time, the snap when you finally release that tension, it isn't your fault. It's the inevitable consequence of the overstretching itself.
Yeah.
So try to stay calm. Repeat your no kindly but firmly if necessary. You can use phrases like, I understand this is frustrating for you, but my answer remains the same. Or, this one is powerful. I genuinely care about you, and I also need to take care of myself right now.
Ooh, that second phrase is key. It clarifies it's not about rejecting them or abandoning them. It's about returning to and honoring yourself.
Precisely. It's an act of self-preservation, really.
Yeah.
And that self-preservation ultimately allows you to show up more fully and authentically in the moments when you can genuinely say yes from the heart.
This all ties into step 12, which feels really deep. Rewriting the story you've been told about saying no.
Yeah, because so many of us have been operating under this old, often unspoken, outdated narrative, saying no is selfish, or you must sacrifice yourself constantly to be loved or worthy, or disappointing someone is like the worst possible thing.
It's a really heavy script to live by.
It is, but the piece presents this new, liberating truth. You are inherently worthy, separate from what you do for others.
Yeah.
You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to prioritize your own well-being, even if that means someone else feels a little disappointed sometimes. True connection, deep connection, comes from authenticity, not from self-abandonment. Love isn't measured by how much you give up, but by how true you manage to be to yourself.
The story of Ethan, the dad, beautifully illustrates this. The classic people pleaser, always exhausted.
Right. Until his young daughter just asked him, with that simple, brutal honesty kids have, "Why are you always so tired, Dad?"
Oof, that hits hard.
Yeah, and that simple question was a turning point. It made him realize with a jolt what he was actually teaching his daughter through his example. He was teaching her that her needs, her energy would always come last. He was modeling self-abandonment.
And that realization sparked a real change in him.
He made a conscious shift. He said no to yet another optional late-night work project that would have just drained him further. And instead, he said a resounding, enthusiastic yes to having a relaxed movie night, just him and his daughter. That seemingly small no to work, which created space for that yes to family connection. It began to rewrite his story, and importantly, change the dynamic within his home.
It really highlights that every no, even a small one, opens up space for a more authentic, more life-giving yes somewhere else. Which brings us to the final step, step 13, ending this whole process with compassion, not more guilt.
Yes. When you say your no, the aim is for it to come from a place of inner truth and self-love, or at least self-respect. Not from fear, not from anger, not from residual guilt trying to justify itself. You don't need to launch into a big defense or over-apologize endlessly. Trust that your clear, kind boundary is sufficient. It's enough.
And with each instance, each time you practice,
you are teaching the world how to treat you. You are actively sculpting the life you truly want to live, one intentional, clear choice at a time. The piece uses one final analogy I liked. Think of your life as a room. Saying no is like closing windows that let in noise, chaos, things that drain your energy.
Okay.
And in doing so, by closing those windows, you naturally open doors that let in light, peace, connection, and the things that truly nourish your soul.
Closing the noise, opening the light. That's a really powerful way to visualize the impact of this practice, isn't it? So to quickly wrap up those practical steps, start with self-awareness, listen to that inner compass.
That pause.
Use those clear, simple phrases from the toolkit, handle any pushback calmly, understanding it's not about you fixing their reaction.
Their work, not yours.
Commit to rewriting that old story that tells you no is bad, and always aim to set boundaries from a place of compassion, especially for yourself.
Your clear no becomes a declaration of your inherent worth. It really does.
Wow. Okay. We've taken quite a deep dive here into the powerful practice of saying no. We started with its core identity, seeing it as a yes to yourself. We explored how to navigate those internal barriers like guilt and fear.
Yeah.
We uncovered the surprising truth that setting boundaries often earns respect and can even strengthen relationships. And finally, we equipped you with a practical toolkit and hopefully a new narrative to embrace.
And it's become really clear, I think, this isn't about being difficult or selfish in a negative way. It's a fundamental act of self-respect and, frankly, self-care. By consciously curating how you spend your most valuable resources, your time, your energy, you create the space needed for the people, the activities, the rest that truly matter. You get to build that thriving garden we talked about right at the beginning.
It really feels foundational, doesn't it, to living a life that feels intentional, authentic, and actually sustainable for you in the long run.
Absolutely. It shifts you from constantly reacting to life to feeling like you're actively designing it choice by choice.
So, for you listening right now, here's a final provocative thought to maybe carry with you this week. Imagine committing to saying no just one more time this week, just once, to something that feels like a drain, a burden, or maybe an obligation that just isn't aligned with your true needs or values right now.
Just one no.
What single yes to yourself would that one no create space for? What doors might that single choice open in your life, even small ones? And what unnecessary noise might it finally shut out?
Take a moment, maybe later today, to really consider that. Where could one brave, intentional no unlock some valuable space for something truly meaningful?